been? What would you have done if it had happened to you? Oh, I would have been so embarrassed. What would you have done if it had happened to you? What would you have done? What would you have done? What would you have done? ¿Qué habrías hecho tú si te hubiera pasado a ti? What would you have done if it, la situación en cuestión, if it had happened to you? Porque no te ha ocurrido a ti, se me pasó a mí. What would you have done? What would you have done if it had happened to you? Escuchad. What would you have done if it had happened to you? Así lo decimos. No tienes que hacerlo tú así. If it had happened to you. If it had happened to me, I would have been. Yo habría estado tan violento, tan apurado. I would have been so embarrassed. Embarazado? No. Apurado o avergonzado. Hello again. Listen, what would you have done if it had happened to you? I would have been so embarrassed. What would you have done? What would you have done? What would you have done? What would you have done if it had happened to you? I would have been so embarrassed. Me habría sentido súper violento, súper embarazoso, apurado. Yes, if it had happened to me. What would you have done if it had happened to you? Yeah, ¿qué habrías hecho tú? De haber sido tú, de haber estado tú en su lugar. Si te hubiera pasado a ti. What would you have done? What would you have done? What would you have done? ¿Qué habrías tú hecho, literalmente? What would you have done? What would you have done? What would you have? You have? Me como la H de have, ¿a que sí? What would you have done? 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 What would you have done if it had happened? If it had happened. Si ello hubiera pasado a ti. O sea, si te hubiera pasado. De haber pasado a ti. What would you have done? ¿Qué habrías hecho? What would you have done if it had happened to you? If it had happened to me, I don't know what I would have done. What would you have done? I would have been so embarrassed. And what would you have done? What would you have done?
Hey, how's it going? Listen, I need your opinion. Last night I had a date with another girl, and after she insulted my sports car, I asked her to leave. What would you have done? What would you have done? She insulted my new sports car. What would you have done? Come on, tell me, what would you have done? Would you have done the same as me? Exactly. Everything was going well until she started speaking about cars. And she started to insult it, saying it's ugly. So, I did what everyone else would have done. I asked her to leave. I called her a taxi. Come on, don't look at me like that. I mean, what would you have done if she insulted one of your favorite possessions? And if she thinks she can insult my new sports car and then expect me to drop her off? No way. So, what would you have done? Would you have kept quiet? Would you have just sat there and listened to her insult your new car? Or would you have said something? What would you have done? Would you have done the same as me? Exactly. Just as I thought.
Hi again. All right, listen. What would you have done if it had happened to you? Me? I would have been so embarrassed. Wow. What would you have done? ¿Qué habrías hecho tú si te hubiera pasado a ti? What would you have done if it had happened to you? To me? I would have been so embarrassed. Okay, if it had happened to you. De haberte pasado a ti. Si te hubiera pasado a ti. If it had happened to you. If it had happened. La D, ese sonido de al final suena, en inglés, en triángulo parlantes. If it had happened to you. What would you have done? If it had. Contracción, hacemos una contracción. It'd. I-T apóstrofe D. Good luck, Si no lo puedes reproducir, no pasa nada. Decir, if it had happened to you. What would you have done if it had happened to you? If it had happened to you. Strength. Fortaleza. La palabra del día. Fortalecer o reforzar. To strengthen. Hago ejercicios para strengthen my arm. to strengthen my arm, to strengthen my legs, to strengthen my will, mi voluntad, to strengthen.
Oh, hello again, my darlings. I'm sorry, I'm a bit busy today. You see, I've joined a new choir, un coro. Yes, a new choir with my Spanish friends. And I'm trying to teach them one of my favorite, all-time favorite songs. It's called If It Had Been Different. Oh, if it had been different. Si hubiera sido diferente. Well, it's about an old love of mine. Oh, and what a song. It makes me think, if it had been different. Oh, well, this is the second time I've tried to teach them the song. The first time they refused to say the word it'd. But it's not that difficult. Escucha. Deja de pensar en cómo se escribe. Sí, I-T apostrophe D. Y piensa en la pronunciación. Es it'd. 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 If it had been different. Good. Do you want to hear a little? All right, wait, I'll practice with you. Oh, we could have been so happy if it had been different. Oh, we could have been so happy if it had been easier. If it had been easier. If it had been different. What do you think?
Hello again. Okay, what would you have done if it had happened to you? Me? I'd have been so embarrassed. I'd have been so embarrassed. Sí, yo en ese, si me hubiera pasado a mí, me habría sentido muy apurado, muy violento. I would have been. Contractions. Two types of contractions here. I'd have been, I would. I'd have been so embarrassed. Or I, y contraigo sobre would have been. Yo digo would have, no digo I'd have, pero también en el mundo 40-60, 60-40, I'd have been, I would have been. Yo digo, if it had happened to me, I would have been so embarrassed. Yes, tan embarazado, pero en español no suena, pero es apurado. De pasar un apuro, de sentirse muy violento. I would have been so embarrassed. I would have been so embarrassed. Embarrassed. I would have been or I'd have been. Depende de qué región del mundo anglosajón. I'd have been or I would have been so embarrassed if it had happened to me.
I would have been so embarrassed. I would have been so embarrassed. Have you seen the newspaper? The story in the newspaper? This foreigner was dancing at a flamenco party with a professional flamenco dancer. He tried to, but they said it was terrible. Everyone was laughing at him. I would have been so embarrassed. So embarrassed. That's right. I would have been so embarrassed. I would have been so embarrassed. Embarrassed. I would have been so embarrassed. That's right. Yeah, it says it was at the party, which was, in the same town, right here. Last night. Wait a minute, I was at that party. I would have been so embarrassed. It's me! The story's about me. They said everyone was laughing at me. What? But I'm practically Spanish. Why would they be laughing at me? I'm a great dancer. I'm so embarrassed.